Hey everyone, I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
And welcome back to Upside Down Thoughts, a NASCAR podcast. And we are back with a Cracker Barrel 400 from Nashville Super Speedway. A little disclaimer before we get into this episode. This is our third time trying to film this podcast. So we're going to try to get through it, quick and easy so we can get caught up before Pocono, like we keep trying to say. But one point I want to make before we get into qualifying, if you guys are ever trying to make a podcast, just never use Spotify's recording studio. It is the worst thing I have ever seen in my entire life, and the customer service is 10 times worse. So just use a third party or use Discord or something that's simple and easy that will record it very simple. So just a little disclaimer here, but let's get right into qualifying. Chase Briscoe goes back-to-back, gets the pole. So super good qualifying effort from the 19 team, and his teammate of Denny Hamlin right behind him in second. So JGR is coming in with the power with qualifying. William Byron, the first Chevy, Tyler Reddick, and Ross Chastain rounding out the top five. So Chastain with his win at the 600, he's carrying that momentum perfectly fine right into qualifying for Nashville.
For sure. And I'm going to skip over a few names here just for kind of sake of time. As you mentioned, this is our third time doing it. But I do want to note on some of the great qualifying efforts. We see Brad Keselowski and the sixth team starting sixth. It's their best start of the season. It's really exactly what this team needs, I think. They've been struggling with good finishes. They were close at Kansas, and they can't just seem to put everything together, rather than if it's qualifying or if it's the race in general, pit road. But they've got themselves right where they want to be to start this Nashville race. And other notable starting positions, we see Michael McDowell 8th, another great start. Bubba Wallace in 12th, a good start for him, as well as Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Eric Jones in 13th and 14th.
Yeah, and I'll just finish off qualifying like we mentioned. Some more of the poor qualifying efforts. Alex Bowman in 24th, Kyle Busch in 25th, which was my pick to win. Hocevar 26th, Kyle Larson in 28th. So, just some of the more unusual qualifying efforts from those guys I mentioned. But that's pretty much it that we got for qualifying. So if you want to take us right into the race, you can.
Yeah, for sure. Getting into the race, Nashville being kind of the short track it is, we have a 300-lap race to get through here. And right from the beginning, I did want to mention this, as we had talked about this in the other two shots. We don't have to spend as much time on it. But AJ Allmendinger would have a pre-race inspection failure the morning of the race. And instead of being held for a certain amount of laps or just a pass-through, he would also have to serve a 10-minute penalty on pit road during pacing and once the race would start. So this would turn out to be somewhere between 15 to 20 laps. So there was no chance getting back in the race after this penalty. And I want to know your opinion on this again. Is this an excessive penalty?
Yeah, I'll kind of restate what I said in the other two shots, but I've never seen something like this happen in any race I've watched. It's not 10 laps, it's 10 minutes on pit road. And, with how quickly you can run laps around Nashville, I think it's almost or just under a 30-second lap is usually the norm. This would pretty much end this race. I mean, you're not going to come back from 10 minutes being held on pit road. So I don't know what went on with Colleague and what unauthorized work they did on the underbody. I'd love to have that information. I don't, unfortunately. I don't know, if this was something that AJ had to do with or something like that 16 team of Colleague. His teammate didn't have any issues with this. So I'm assuming it's just that 16 crew that made some unapproved adjustments for inspections. So like I keep saying, I would love to have the information for you guys, but unfortunately I just don't. But this is crazy.
Yeah, it certainly is. We have really never seen a penalty like this in NASCAR since we've started watching it. And this is going on our 5th year of watching the sport. So quite crazy there. But now for the official start of the race, on the 3rd lap, we will see Kyle Larson get tapped by Zane Smith. And around the 25th area, as Larson had a poor qualifying effort. And it's going to send him all the way to the back. We had mentioned, is his head just not there? After Indy and, at Indianapolis in the 500 for IndyCar, he wrecked about halfway through, and at the Coca-Cola 600, he didn't even make it halfway. So what's your opinion here? You think he just needs to really just kind of get his head reset and, maybe just hit a hard reset? And you think that's the best thing for him?
Yeah, I think a hard reset is the perfect words to use. he's was focused so much on Indy and other branches of motorsport. The guy will race anything that has four wheels. So I think he needs to just, for the rest of the season, just solely focus on NASCAR, and get back to the dominant performances that he has. Because when he branches out to these other motorsports, you can kind of see a drop off in performance in the races. So I think a hard reset is the perfect choice of words. And getting into the playoffs, I think we only have, after Pocono, like 7 races until the playoffs, which is crazy to say. I feel like the season just got started, but I have no issues or no doubts that he's gonna be fired up for the playoffs and get that hard reset. So he has Indy behind him, and I think it's only up from here for Larson.
Yeah, I think it's a great point of view. You kind of just build off my statement of saying that he needs that hard reset, and I think that is the best thing for him. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do, the rest of this race and in the future few weeks. But moving on from there, Chase Briscoe is our leader over Denny Hamlin. This is going to take us into green flag pit stops. Larson's going to be the first to pit from 30th on lap 39.
Yeah, and while we're going through these pit stops, we'd see fluctuation and lead changes and everything. But Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric would be the last to come into pit. So that would kind of recycle out everyone, and everyone would come in for green flag pit stops. But while we are going through the pit stops, we'd see Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe report a potential brake pedal issue. And this is going to be a big problem for a track like Nashville, where brake force is a huge factor in having speed in this race. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on what happened here and how the race is going to go for these two moving on.
Yeah, it's clearly a mechanical failure, but this is kind of going to be similar to almost Hamlin's clutch failure. I believe was that Kansas. Could you correct me if I'm wrong there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of see these drivers both struggle more and more throughout the race as their problems are just going to get worse. Tyler Reddick is going to be able to maintain speed, but Chase Briscoe, who had the pole effort, is going to not fall off pace, but he's going to fall way back in the pack and not be able to hold pace with the leaders, which is really unfortunate for him. But moving on from that issue, Briscoe would kind of stay the leader for a little bit until his issue would get a lot worse. But eventually, Denny Hamlin is going to pass William Byron for second. Reddick's going to close in on fourth. And Hamlin is going to get by Briscoe for the lead with about 7 to go in the stage. And Reddick is going to get by Briscoe as well, leading us to a Hamlin, Reddick, Briscoe, Byron, Bell top 5 at the end of stage 1.
Yeah, and you mentioned those 5 names. I feel like we're going to mention those names 100 more times this podcast. But really, guys, the race was with Hamlin, Reddick, and Byron for this stage. And it's going to continue that way heading into stage 2. But Riley Herbst would get the free pass after the stage as he was a lap down, and then we'd see all the lead lap cars come into pit road, and we'd see Ryan Blaney make an interesting pit road strategy call, opting for 2 tires, allowing them to get out first, and his teammate of Austin Cindric does the exact same thing. So we'd see a Penske 1-2, and I love this strategy call from the Penske guys. Track position is super key at a track like Nashville, so we'll see how it's going to work out for them entering stage 2.
Yeah, so it's going to lead us to a Blaney Cindric restart. As you mentioned, the Penske boys only taking the 2 tires. And Blaney is going to clear for the lead. However, Denny Hamlin will get to the inside of Austin Cindric for second and will make the pass going into turn 3 right at the beginning of the stage. But just as this stage is kicked off, about 5-6 laps in, Hocevar and Stenhouse are going to get together on the entrance to turn 3, and Stenhouse is going to go up into the wall, and his race will be over as his car will be totaled. And we mentioned Hocevar has put himself as we're a few weeks ahead in a lot of rough situations, and this being one of them. Stenhouse, after what he did to Kyle Busch last year at the All-Star race, for those of you that don't know, he did punch Kyle Busch, so probably not a guy you want to mess with. And this is clearly Hocevar's fault. Ricky did kind of cut in front of him, but he was clear. It was the right call by Stenhouse's spotter, Tab Boyd. And Hocevar just chose not to lift and drove right through the back of Stenhouse, pulling him up into the outside wall. So to see this happen with about 200 laps to go, it's quite early for Hocevar to do something like this. And would give Stenhouse a good reason to be upset.
Yeah, I think you explained it perfectly. I'll just give my little opinion on it. Like you said, it's too early for racing like this in the position that they're in. And you mentioned a guy like Ricky not being scared of confrontation. Yeah, this is kind of one of the last guys I'd want to mess with on the field. And as we are a few weeks ahead at Mexico City, it's going to get a whole lot worse. So we'll see what happens at Pocono with these two. And if I'm Hocevar, I'm staying in my hauler and not risking the chance to see Ricky walking around the garage. But moving on from here, as we're going to get back to the racing, Hamlin and Cindric would restart us with Hamlin clearing Cindric into turn 1, and then we'd see, as soon as we got the restart started, well, cautions breed cautions, and Alex Bowman gets loose under Gragson in 20th on back, and they both make super hard contact in the outside wall. Kyle Larson almost looked like he got involved with this, but he doesn't. He avoids it very well, and he'll move on with a clean race car.
Yeah, he was able to get it wound down, no damage for him, so he will leapfrog his Hendrick teammate of Alex Bowman, who had a hard hit here into the outside wall you mentioned, along with the 4-Noah Gragson. Here, this is kind of similar to the Hocevar Stenhouse, as, it's on entry to a corner, two cars kind of going for the same real estate. Bowman hits the yellow line, or the apron, as others may call it, and kind of gets him loose, or should I say tight, and kind of throws his car up the racetrack, and Gragson was to his outside up the racetrack. So Bowman would take Gragson with him up to the wall and would both give them hard contact.
Yeah, and, during the caution, we'd see J.J. Yeley get the free pass, and here we go on the restart with Hamlin and Cindric again, and I'm going to keep saying the same line, cautions breed cautions, and this one was very interesting. We'd see Christopher Bell with Eric Jones. Bell would kind of try to self-clear Eric Jones or pin him down and take the position, and Eric Jones got very loose off the apron and kind of shot up into Chris Bell's left quarter panel and spun him out super hard to the outside wall. So it sucks for both of these guys as they're running in the top 5. But I don't really have anyone else to put the blame on. Then this is kind of Bell's fault. I understand the move, and I understand dirty air could have been a factor, but you got to give Eric Jones room. So you can't really blame him there. And it's just, a tough wreck for both of these guys running in the top 5.
Right. Again, this is very similar to the Hocevar Stenhouse wreck as well. It's kind of a hybrid along with the Bowman Gragson wreck. It's Eric Jones is there. He's on the bottom lane. Christopher Bell kind of door slammed him and got in front of Eric Jones, but once the 20 was in front of Eric Jones, Jones decided to ship him. And in my opinion, he kind of had all right to, which is where it's very similar to the Hocevar Stenhouse wreck, And I don't think it was as much of as Jones was out of room, like Bowman was washing up the track into Gragson. I think it was more, I'm fed up with you, and if you're going to race me like this with 180 laps to go, I'm going to return the favor and I'm going to wreck you. And Bell, I really don't think had any problem with Jones wrecking him. I think he realized what he did wrong and held himself accountable, and he would be able to stay in the race as he would make a pretty good save and only back it into the wall a little bit, not a whole lot of damage.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect explanation of what happened. But getting back into the racing, we see Hamlin and Cindric obviously restart us back to green. And then we see Ryan Blaney for really the first time contend with Hamlin as he clears for second. So these are the kind of the front two cars for the stage to go into the stage end. We see Tyler Reddick start that green flag cycle for us here. But just as quickly as that green flag cycle starts, we'd see Corey Heim and Brad Keselowski. And this is an interesting wreck because while this was happening, Prime did a great job, explaining what was going on. And, we heard the spotter info, and the spotter gave the correct information to Corey Heim. And Corey Heim, I guess, just thought he was clear on Brad Keselowski and wasn't, and kind of turned himself off the nose into the outside wall. So a mistake for Corey Heim in his young career. I'm sure Brad wasn't too happy, but I get it. These Cup cars are new for Heim, but man, you had all the correct information and you just made the mistake. So it's just tough to see for Brad, continuing to get caught up in other people's mess.
For sure. We have talked about, the problem with going from Truck Series straight to Cup Series. Well, from ARCA to Cup Series, we saw with Shane Van Gisbergen at Charlotte, last week. So I'm not going to get into that. We already talked about that on our last podcast. But, you mentioned the two words, it's a rookie mistake. And Brad Keselowski, if you drive across his nose, he's not one that's going to lift. He's not going to let you go. He's going to drive you hard, and he's going to get up underneath you and, not wreck you, but he's going to give you a hard time and let you know he's frustrated. And Corey Heim didn't exactly handle it the best, got loose on Brad's front bumper and ends up wrecking himself into the outside wall.
Yeah, it's this. Everyone that didn't get to pit on their cycle, they'd come in for pit stops. So Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney would maintain in the lead for this restart, and we'd see Hamlin just shoot off on these restarts. You'd get up almost to a half a second lead once they got in the backstretch, and Ryan Blaney just really didn't have the restart speed that Hamlin had here. Going on to almost the end of stage 2 here.
Yeah, and as we approach the end of stage 2, I also want to mention this. Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson have been communicating through their radios that they've been having some problems. Larson says he has a loose wheel and will end up having to pit as we approach the end of stage 2. And Tyler Reddick will say that he has a possible tire rub as well. So he won't pit. He will stay out on the racetrack, but after Tyler Reddick already is having his brake rotor problems, this is just a whole nother thing to make his day worse and will make his possibility of getting a good finish even more difficult.
Yeah, it sucks for a guy like Briscoe who started on the pole. Really needs a win to gain them momentum for, as they're inside the playoff bubble, but a win would pay a lot for that team as Briscoe is in his first year with JGR, and he's doing a great job, but these brake problems aren't going to go away. So it just sucks for him. But getting back into here, I kind of lap 165 range. We'd see Ryan Blaney catch up to Hamlin, and he'd bring William Byron right with him. So for the end of the stage, the three names you're going to have to watch out for are Hamlin, Blaney, and Byron, as they're going to be passing each other and, side drafting. And, we'll see Blaney pass Byron and Byron pass Blaney back and forth. And, finally, after 10 laps of these battles going on, we finally see them spread a little bit with Blaney almost pulling to a second lead over Byron. So, you see these battles and then they kind of get stretched out. That's kind of the name of the game for Nashville here. But Blaney would get that second lead over Byron, like I said, and he would end up winning stage 2. So a great stage for Ryan Blaney.
Yeah, definitely. In that stage 2 top 5, it will be Blaney, Byron, Hamlin, who we already mentioned. Joey Logano in 4th, who is a Nashville winner and is having a good run up in 4th. And Eric Jones, who after his contact with Christopher Bell is maintaining a good day up in the top 5 as well. So really good speed out of that legacy number 43.
Yeah, and I love how he's able to regain after his incident with Christopher Bell. So a top 5 in the stage is huge for a team like that who's just outside that playoff bubble. But we'd see all lead lap cars coming for service, and we'd see Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney again with those quick stops to get them out, on the front row for stage 3. And being on that front row is huge at a track like Nashville, like I keep mentioning, with the track position and how difficult it is to pass here. So that's huge for them at the start of the final stage.
Yeah, for sure. And no later do we see the green flag come out after the stage 2 caution. Well, Ryan Preece is going to spin in the back by himself in turns 1 and 2. And you mentioned this in your takes that we've had, but it's about time we finally see a spin based off of just prime aerodynamics and not contact with anyone, as Ryan Preece is just in the midst of dirty air. He's lifting, he's in the gas, he's going up the racetrack, he's tight, he's loose, and eventually this thing does get away from him. And he will slide up into the outside wall. Not a whole lot of damage, and he's able to keep it going, but it would bring out the caution.
Yeah, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm so surprised it took us to lap 194 to see a single car aero incident. So unfortunately, it was Ryan Preece who was fighting to keep his playoff hopes alive, but it was bound to happen at some point, being in the mid-pack. So Logano and Blaney would stay our leaders with Eric Jones in 3rd. So we'd see Eric Jones and Joey Logano battling for second as Blaney would clear, heading into the final 100 laps here.
Yeah, for sure. And Hamlin will eventually be the next one to challenge, as he's going to blitz by Eric Jones, William Byron, Joey Logano, and he is going to move up into second. He's going to be the one chasing Ryan Blaney as they approach about 75 laps to go. But Blaney is out front by about 2 seconds at this point, and it's going to bring us to the final green flag pit cycle, which I'll allow you to get into.
And Eric Jones would bring us right to that, be the first car in for this final green flag pit. Getting first is always, you don't really want to stay out for too long. There could be a looming caution, but a single person in. Some guys had different mixes of strategy, but Ryan Blaney would maintain his lead after he came out of the pit stops after everything cycled through. So we got about 40 laps to go, and this is when it's Ryan Blaney knows it's game on, and he would love to have a win to finally stop worrying about points and lock him into the playoffs.
For sure, and you notice as Blaney's the leader, he has a new car in his mirror, and it's not the 11 of Denny Hamlin or the 22 of Joey Logano or even the 24 of William Byron. It's the 77 of Carson Hocevar. So starting all the way back in 26, he finally has found his way to the front, and especially after his incident with Stenhouse where he was able to drive away pretty much unscathed. Well, to see him about 3 seconds back from Blaney is not necessarily concerned, but he might be saying, wow, how the heck did he get there? And, this guy is going to start end up cutting into Blaney's lead a little bit, brings the lead down to about 2 seconds, but Hocevar would end up running into lap traffic. So his time cut down on Blaney, he would end up losing back, and Blaney's going to pull back out to about a 3 second lead.
Yeah, and, as I was watching this, if it was anyone else in the lead, I'd love to see Carson Hocevar catch the leader and contend for a win. But, I got to pull for my guy, Ryan Blaney, and he would end up winning this race after he concludes lap 300 with almost a 3 second lead over Hocevar. So, Hocevar was catching him, but that lap traffic just is so tough to deal with at a track like Nashville. But a great day for Carson Hocevar, having that incident with Ricky, but, keeping his head cool, calm, collected. He has a race to run. He's not out there to make friends. It was a mistake on his part, but, his job is to get the best finish for his team, and he certainly did that today. So great stuff overall from him.
Yeah, for sure. And, with Blaney going on to win this race, that takes us to none other than the race results. So I'll let you jump right into it. As your 12 Ryan Blaney, he will finally find victory lane, and it'll be his first win of the season.
Yeah, and this is huge for Blaney. I mean, finally stop having to worry about what everyone else is saying, and he can get that win and cement himself in the playoffs. And I think he's just going to continue to get better because of this. It's just huge for his team. And all three Penske cars are locked into the playoffs for a second year in a row. So it's just huge. But Hocevar, I want to keep touching on. Just such a good job to keep composure after a wreck with Stenhouse, and get a second place finish. Just great execution all day for him. But moving down the list, Bubba Wallace and Eric Jones, you can't look over them with the string of runs that Wallace has had. Just a top 10 finish here is huge. And Eric Jones inside the top 10 all day. Had to run in with Bell, but again, kept his composure, got a top 10 finish as he's just outside that playoff level. So great finishes for these guys, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm going to go a little further up the leaderboard. A few drivers I want to mention. Denny Hamlin will end up bringing it home third, but he did have the Xfinity fastest lap. So instead of 52 points for coming third, he will get that extra 53rd point, which we've said over and over, that could be huge when it comes down to it. But it won't matter as much for someone like him who's already locked into the playoffs on wins, unless we would happen to see more than 16 drivers win. But I don't see that happening, as you mentioned. Being at Pocono and knowing who wins the Michigan race and the Mexico City race, that there's going to be too many spots open, I think, to be filled unless we would start seeing some more out of the ordinary winners. But it's a good run for Hamlin overall. And I also want to touch on the 8th place finisher, Kyle Larson. This guy, he had to pit for a loose wheel. He dropped all the way back to 36th at the beginning of the race. He was almost in the Bowman-Gregson rack. He had to lower his speed pretty much all the way down to almost pace speed just to get around it. So this guy had basically had to restart his race 3 times over and still manages to bring it home 8th. So, that's just, even though he's not winning or getting that top 5, top 3, it just continues, I think, to put him in the GOAT discussion. No matter how many times you put this guy in the back, he just goes through traffic like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, for sure. Great finish from Kyle Larson, who you mentioned had all those problems. But just a few more drivers I want to touch on. Kyle Busch in 12th that we didn't really mention, but he was my pick to win. So top 15, can't complain really. Chase Elliott in 15th, who was your pick, just didn't really have the car to go out and do it today. As you mentioned, he was a winner here a couple of years ago, but his car didn't really handle too well in air and in traffic. So just tough to see for him. But another top 20 finish, so he still has that reputation on his belt. And you see Chase Briscoe in 17th. Just sucks. I mean, had the car to go win and just had a mechanical issue, and he was battling it all day and managed to get a top 20. So, I know Briscoe would love to get that win or a top 5 finish, but in my eyes, you cannot complain with what he had to deal with on the track.
Definitely. And looking even further down the leaderboard in 23rd, we see Brad Keselowski. And, I mentioned he finally has the qualifying speed, and the last thing he needs to do is piece it all together, and he just can't seem to do it. It's just not there for the 6 team, where they're either qualifying in the back and finishing up front, which, isn't a bad thing, or qualifying at the front and finishing in the back. So that team has about half the glass full, and they just need to fill that other half. And if they can, I think that's definitely going to be a dangerous team, as we've seen the other RFK cars of Buescher and Priest be dangerous so far this season, even though Priest was 28th at Nashville and Buescher was 14th. But they've been good this year as well. But looking a little further down the leaderboard, we see the cars that were involved in accidents, and one of those being Alex Bowman. And we mentioned his tough run at Charlotte after his spin at the end of stage 1, and here he is wrecked out of another race, gathering only 1 point. And this is one of those guys that we have not seen win yet, but he knows how to get it done at Pocono. So who knows, maybe we could see a surprise winner this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I would love to. You mentioned him getting it done at Pocono. I think he absolutely could. But finishing off here with the finishing order, 3 DNS, we have Corey Heim, Gragson, and Stenhouse. Stenhouse is the one I want to touch on most. And, he was very adamant after the race, saying, well, I don't have the money to go see him after the race to host the VAR. But as we know what happens in Mexico City, that would only, increase his anger with Hocevar. So I can't wait to see what happens at Pocono. Hopefully there is no fight or whatever, but I'd love to see these guys go head to head and race hard because they're, 2 great race car drivers fighting for a playoff position. So I can't wait to see what happens.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned they're both on the bubble and on the playoff bubble, and they are definitely the hot topic of conversation right now. And we've had all this talk about Pocono. Well, there is another race. We do have Michigan, and they will not have run-ins at Michigan, as we know already, as that race was 2 weeks ago now at this point. But Mexico City, they will end up having a run-in, so I'm looking forward to getting into that on that podcast. But I did mention that Michigan is our next race, so we have told each other our picks to win, and I'll go first, and I'll start with the 43 of Eric Jones. He's the Michigan-born native, and he has speed this past week at Nashville, and see if he can get it done at Michigan, as that 43 legacy car really has been coming alive the past couple weeks.
That's a great pick, and my pick was the 60 car Ryan Preece. I don't really know why I picked him. Don't have a good reason. I was just like, let me just pick a dark horse or an underdog to see if they can go win their way into the playoffs. But that's pretty much it for the Nashville podcast. I have one announcement before we end, but if you want to say any last comments, the floor is yours.
I've got nothing. I'll let you make your announcement.
All right, guys. So as I mentioned in last podcast with Charlotte, how we were going to create, an Instagram, Twitter, or, YouTube channel. Well, all that stuff is created. So our Instagram is the exact same as what it is on Spotify, just Upside Down Thoughts. And in our Instagram bio, there's a link tree with every single platform that we're on so far. So there's a Twitter, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio podcast. And everything is just Upside Down Thoughts. So if you're if you can't find the Instagram, just search that name, and I'm very positive it will come up. So there we go. Check out our stuff. Follow us. We might get some exclusive content for Pocono on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, I guess stay tuned, and I want to thank you guys all for listening to Nashville. Sorry if this one was a little bit rushed, as we're kind of getting tired of talking about Nashville. This is our third time trying to do this, but I hope you guys have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.